Weird sciencey facts that boggle my mind. May sound psychedelic, but I promise I'm not tripping when I tell you your cousin is a mushroom, genetically speaking. So we divide most living things into plants and animals, and all living things have DNA. And all living things share at least some DNA, because evolutionarily, single-celled eukaryotes are every living thing's great-granddaddy. And how much DNA we share with other living things is based on when our evolutionary paths diverge. We can trace the animal evolutionary family tree all the way back to about 1 billion years ago when they diverged from their eukaryote ancestors. Plants, on the other hand, diverged from their eukaryote ancestors about 600 million years ago. So we've been evolving our own unique DNA for about 1 billion years since our last common ancestor with plants. As a result, we only share about 1% of our DNA with plants. It's also weird that we got our start before plants did, like a long time before plants did. There is reasons for that make a lot of sense, but that's a whole different rabbit hole. It's still, though, hard to wrap your mind around, you know? But here is where it gets interesting. Mushrooms didn't sit around another 400 million years waiting to branch off with what would become the trees. Get it? They checked out early and came with us. So for a long time after what would become the evolutionary ancestor of animals branched off, mushrooms were evolving on that ride. Now when mushrooms and animals diverged, it's hard to say because mushrooms don't leave a lot of fossils around to study. But they stuck around on our evolutionary chain long enough to the point where we share 50% of our DNA with fungi. So we're basically half Portobello. But it gets weirder. It's not uncommon for us to share DNA with other things. I mean, we share 99% of our DNA with chimps. One tiny change in the DNA can make a huge change in the genome, and you end up with a very different organism. So at 50% of our DNA, we are still very different from mushrooms, obviously. And it would appear that despite getting the early start out of the evolutionary gate, they still ended up evolving to be more like plants than like animals. But things are not always as they appear, and mushrooms are actually much more closely related to us in function than they are to plants. Where every potato knows that plants store their energy as starch, fungi stores carbohydrate energy as glycogen, like us. Where plants use cellulose to build their cell walls, fungi uses polysaccharide chitin, whatever, the same thing that insects use to create their cell walls. Not the same as us, but obviously more animal than plant. And mushrooms do what I'm doing right now, produce vitamin D when they're exposed to the sun. Some people theorize that all these similarities are the reasons that mushrooms taste and feel more like meat than other plants. However, that has not been scientifically verified. But the fact that when Mario goes to the Mushroom Kingdom to hang out with Toad, that premise isn't quite as fictional as we might have thought, you know, that is pretty mind-boggling.